3 seconds.
Good evening, and welcome to the State of the City Address. I'm Dick Brady, and I serve as the President of the Sandusky City Commission. Tonight's State of the City Address looks much different than it did just 1 year ago. At the beginning of 2020, I expected to be giving this address to a packed house at Castaway Bay in front of a large group of Rotarians and friends of Sandusky. COVID-19 has certainly changed everyone's expectations. So much has changed in the world, and so much has changed in Sandusky. Just 30 days into the new year, it was obvious that this calamity was going to have a profound impact on the lives of our residents and on our finances. The potential loss of $4.5 million in amusement park tax and $1.5 million of lodging tax was staring us directly in the face. The only good news was that it was February. If we were bold and acted quickly, time could be our friend. Staff, with the support of our commission, did just that. This pandemic forced us to make some tough decisions, but it also helped so many of our city workers to rise to meet a challenge that no one could have foreseen. The tough decisions to eliminate several positions and the sacrifices made by our non-bargaining employees to forego 5 and even 10% of their salary played an important role in keeping our finances intact. We owe them an immense debt of gratitude for their sacrifice. The foresight of our staff, with the support of our finance committee, to adhere to a more than 20% budget surplus has proven invaluable. That allowed us to begin this year with a $5 million surplus. We're able to utilize the CARES Act funds of more than $1,600,000, along with a $2 million refund from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. These funds helped to lessen the cuts in personnel and in the budget, cuts we would have had to make otherwise. The result of these proactive measures have meant a $3 million reduction in our expenses. All of these efforts have helped us weather this storm. Our strategy has been to reduce many of our programs, but to not eliminate them. We continued to plant seeds. It's a proven fact that communities who continue to inch forward come back much faster than those who do not. The success our city has experienced over the last 6 years is the result of the support of our strategic partners who remain with us today. During this difficult time, we've relied heavily on the healthcare providers within our community to care for our loved ones. They've risen to the occasion, and they've worked in the most challenging conditions to care for sick and to save people's lives. Just as they did 170 years ago during a worldwide cholera epidemic, our local healthcare providers stepped up to meet this challenge. Our city owes a debt of gratitude to everyone at Firelands Regional Medical Center, the Erie County Health Department, long-term care facilities, home health agencies, paramedics, police, and fire personnel, and literally everyone in the medical field. You all have endured long hours of emotionally and physically taxing work, caring for critically ill patients while putting yourself in harm's way. You are the true heroes. COVID-19 has presented a rapidly changing environment throughout the world and here at home, not only in healthcare, but in economic drivers as well. For years, we've built strategic partnerships with the large entities in our region: Cedar Fair, Civista Bank, the Sandusky City Schools, and with hundreds of small businesses as well. They've all been negatively impacted by the pandemic this year, yet they've all shown resilience. I'm proud of the resourcefulness and the commitment that our local businesses have demonstrated. We know that they will not only survive, they will thrive in the future. I'm also proud of the local nonprofits who've stepped in when the need has been the greatest. We're blessed by the contributions of the Erie County Community Foundation, the Whiteman Weber Foundation, OGO, Victory Kitchen, Boys and Girls Clubs of Erie County, and so many others. In the last 6 years, all of these entities have believed that Sandusky can succeed. Now, when times are tough, they are standing with us. They still believe in Sandusky. The future may look a little different than what we planned, but I have no doubt that our city manager and our city employees will continue to respond to our residents by bringing vision and hope to Sandusky.
It's been a tough year. We took cuts early on in the year. We also had people that we had to let go. We declined our numbers of what we had for full-time staff, and we just did that as a precautionary measure to make sure we were able to weather through the storm.
So having a storefront, you're at the mercy of the people who come shop with you. So if the people aren't coming to shop with you, aren't spending money, you got no business. The biggest fear at the time was like what it could do to us health-wise. You know, we had a daughter with asthma, I have asthma. We were more concerned about that, you know, so what do? You know, we know our family's safe, we're at home, but how do we protect the business? How do we protect our finances? So we kind of had to figure out a way to make it work. The city of Sandusky at that time had a grant program that helped small businesses like us. You know, we applied for the grant and we were awarded that, and we were able to use that to, you know, help them with wages, help them with rent, you know, and then we were also able to use that to bring our online business back to life. So I believe when all this is over and done with, and I think that is coming at some point, I think we're going to be a stronger business because of all this.
Coping through COVID was just merely an idea of being able to offer these kids ways to navigate through a pandemic and use those skills to support their mental and emotional wellness. Now you have kids that went through this program that know that they can get a canvas and paint their emotions, because emotions you're allowed to have them. You just need to know what to do when they come. You're okay to be upset. You're okay to be unsure, but there's tools that you can use to cope and manage through that. You know, we gave these kids kindergarten through 8th grade a voice.
I think we have a committed staff that has seen the successes, really enjoyed them, and we don't want to go backwards. And I think that we have enough people ready to push the ball and keep the forward momentum going.
It's the same community we had at the beginning of this year. The shops, the restaurants, Cedar Point, the things that we have here that we can offer that other communities can't are still great. So it's time to dig in and work even harder to make this community what we expect it to be.
It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to not know what's going to happen next, what's going to happen tomorrow, because everything is changing. Everything changes every day, every minute, but it's okay. And there are now a lot of resources that have come out of this pandemic, and the city has proven that, you know, we can do this. You know, we can get together and we can do this. If we really just move forward and be authentic and genuine on what our mission is, and that's to have a city that's collaborative on all levels and supportive of the residents that live here.
Good evening, Sandusky. My name is Eric Wipser, and I am the city manager of the city of Sandusky. And I want to start by thanking Commission President Brady for his eloquent remarks, as well as the entire Sandusky City Commission for their support, as well as our entire staff for their hard work under very difficult circumstances. Some of that staff you saw in that wonderful video produced by New Departure Films for this evening. We're very grateful for their service, as well as the support of all of our city partners in 2020. And 2020 really kicked off for us in the city of Sandusky as we were gearing up to make a presentation on January 10th at the City Club of Cleveland. We were asked to make a presentation titled Small City Solutions with its topic, and I was invited to speak because Sandusky's collaborations and forward-thinking planning had set us apart among small cities in Ohio as an example of a legacy city that was remaking itself to thrive in the 21st century. We discussed our progress, including over $300 million invested in Sandusky over a 5-year period, as part of our Bicentennial Vision Plan, made possible by many partnerships and evidenced by the fact that we were all rushing back to Sandusky after that speech for the ribbon cutting of the Cedar Point Sports Center, a partnership between Cedar Point, the Erie County Commissioners, and Firelands Regional Medical Center. This was one of many major milestones that we plan to celebrate in 2020 that was lining up to be one of the most monumental and impactful years in Sandusky's history. In addition to the opening of the Sports Center, we were also planning on supporting Cedar Point's celebration of its 150th year of operation. And one of our biggest challenges, we thought, going into 2020 was how we were going to manage the huge influx of traffic that we were going to get as people came into town with their freshly minted Gold Pass. In addition to that, we were so excited to unveil the Jackson Street Pier and the new Shoreline Drive. We'd had a full year of programming planned for the pier in partnership with Lake Erie Shores and Islands, local community foundations, and others, and we were debuting the first mile of this revamped Sandusky Bay pathway on Shoreline Drive. We were also in fall of this year getting ready to celebrate the opening of the new Bowling Green State University Cedar Fair School of Resort and Attraction Management that was developed in a former vacant parking lot in the city of Sandusky in partnership with those two partners and Marus Development. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we couldn't wait to unveil and to support Sandusky City Schools in the dedication of two new elementary schools, Sandusky Intermediate and Ontario. And to an extent, all of those things still happen in 2020. They just didn't roll out or happen with the fanfare or the excitement that we thought would be possible. And as Commissioner Brady stated in his remarks, we knew something was coming early in 2020, around February, but I don't think it had really set in. In fact, for me, it was on March 11th, the evening of March 11th, where I attended a live Broadway show at the Sandusky State Theater, Finding Neverland, which was produced by Sandusky native Charles Froman. And myself and 1,000 other Sanduskians enjoyed a great show that evening. We turned our cell phones off to appreciate the show. But then after the show was over, there was a phenomenon that sort of spread throughout the theater as each of us sort of slowly turned our phones on and began to realize that night they had announced that Tom Hanks had tested positive for COVID-19 and the NBA had postponed its season. And it felt to all of us walking out of that crowded theater that the world had changed in just a few short hours. And while it was still unclear what the public health impacts of COVID would be, the impact of COVID on the city's finances quickly became apparent. And fortunately, due to the leadership of our Finance Committee and City Commission going back several years, we entered 2020 with a record reserve of over $5 million. However, the delayed opening of Cedar Point would make Sandusky one of the most economically impacted cities on a per capita basis in the entire state of Ohio, if not the country, due to the impact of COVID-19 on hospitality and amusement parks. In fact, we projected that our $24 million operating budget would be down between $5 and $10 million, and it sounds like it's going to end up being down at just over $7 million from anticipated revenues. And so we made the difficult decision to postpone capital projects and an even more difficult decision to implement a staff reduction that, when combined with not filling any vacancies that were created by retirements or attrition throughout the year, meant that more than 1 out of 8 city positions went unfilled in 2020. And making those difficult decisions was so hard on all of the staff that had to be involved in that, myself included. And when you go through something like that, you just have to sort of breathe it all in and take a deep breath and then move forward. And I couldn't be more proud of our resilient staff as they've continued to provide services in spite of those cuts. And we still miss the many great workers whose positions are no longer filled. On April 3rd, in the midst of a shutdown ordered by the state, in spite of our fiscal challenges, we moved quickly to take our economic development fund, which had been financed by the previous year's admissions taxes as part of the Issue 8 campaign and laid out in our Bicentennial Vision Plan, and we created a new fund geared specifically towards small business relief to those who were impacted by COVID-19. And within just 2 weeks, we got over $160,000 out the door to over 80 locally owned businesses who'd been impacted by the pandemic. Also in April, the Erie County Community Foundation convened several partners to ensure that emergency needs would continue to be met during the pandemic, and we partnered with New Departure Films on a Sandusky Stronger Together video campaign that was meant to uplift the community during difficult times by highlighting the perseverance and demonstrating Sanduskians rising to the occasion at the onset of the pandemic. Then, on May 25th, just as we began to adjust to life during the pandemic, the killing of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer created a national uprising and riots in nearby Cleveland, caused Sanduskians to worry about what might happen in our own diverse community. But on June 1st, our community held a peaceful protest and march that started in downtown Sandusky. The event was attended by myself, city commissioners, our police chief, and many other staff, and the entire community was proud of the peaceful nature of the protest, made possible in part because of the community police programs that had been initiated by Chief Orzek and had been funded by Issue 8. And on the evening of June 10th, as I enjoyed a socially distanced beer with a coworker at Bait House Brewery, an ominous storm rolled in quickly. And within minutes, I began getting texts and calls that the Sandusky State Theater had collapsed. I rushed to the State Theater, and by the time I got there, Executive Director Chris Parthmore was already on the scene, as were city staff from nearly every single department of the city, and they had already mobilized to secure and to begin to clear the site. Their teamwork and dedication and the support of the hundreds of community members who made their way downtown was inspiring. We made the decision to post a picture of the wreckage of the theater on social media that night, but we wanted to make sure that we posted it with an inspiring message. And Tom Horseman and our staff found a fitting quote from Finding Neverland, the very play that had been performed at the theater on the evening that the reality of 2020 was setting in. And the quote from that play with that social media post, which reached tens of thousands of people that very night, was that all that matters now is where we go from here. And that line couldn't have been more true on June 10th, and it couldn't be more true tonight. 2020 has been a brutal year, and 2021 will continue to be difficult due to the pandemic. But we enter 21 with momentum because of the resiliency demonstrated by our own first responders, by local teachers, partners like Firelands Regional Medical Center, the Erie County Health Department, our small businesses, and institutions like Cedar Point, who had their own business operations dramatically impacted by COVID this year. But we persevered, and we built on the stronger foundation that was created by our implementation of the Bicentennial Vision Plan over the past 5 years. That foundation created the implementation of the plan for Sandusky's neighborhoods. Starting with housing, we tripled our resources for code compliance. We created a rental registration program that funded a position specifically dedicated to that. And in the last 5 years, we've issued thousands of violations and have helped residents make investments into their property to bring them back up to code and to beautify the city. We've also done thousands of nuisance abatements for tall grass and junk in yards, and the city is more beautiful today because of that. In addition to those sticks, we also created carrots or grant programs, including a 10-year 75% residential tax abatement for rehab or new homes built in the city, down payment assistance, and grants to incentivize repairs and rehab of homes. And nearly 1,000 homes have benefited from those programs, with over $20 million in private development in Sandusky's housing stock through the acquisition and investment into that housing stock. And over 200 demolitions in partnership with the Erie County Land Bank have helped us stabilize our neighborhoods, and we look to continue these investments, which are leading to an improved housing market in Sandusky, and to be able to transition housing resources, which had heretofore been dedicated to demolition, to the rehabilitation of the thousands of homes in Sandusky that can be saved. We didn't stop with our housing. We invested in our local parks. We've remade 8 neighborhood parks in the last 5 years and continue our investments in JC Park in 2020. And we've also tripled the size of our recreation staff and have created award-winning programs like the Midtown Supper Club, Winter Break Camp, Spring Break Camp, with the motto of our recreation programs are on when the schools are off. And we've invested heavily in local infrastructure, including streets, trees, and sidewalks, which had been neglected for years before the passage of Issue 8. We brought back specific programs for each of these areas. In fact, when I look at trees, in just last year, we planted over 300 trees in the city of Sandusky and removed or maintained over 300 dead and dying trees in the city of Sandusky. We had been planning a historic investment in our local street resurfacing program this year. Unfortunately, that had to be postponed because of the pandemic and the $7 million in less revenue that we had this year. But as our budget comes back to pre-COVID levels, this is exactly where we're going to prioritize our funding, is to build up those programs for our local infrastructure. And in addition to what we do at our parks, in our streets, our sidewalks, and our housing stock, we know that perhaps the most critical partnership for Sandusky's neighborhoods is our partnership with Sandusky City Schools. And we know that COVID has had a disproportionate impact on the Sandusky City school system and all districts that serve disadvantaged populations as they've been forced to go remote, and that increases disparities in learning that already took place in our society. We're going to continue to support them as they continue to remake their campus and their curriculum as a 21st century place of learning. And finally, we are going to double down on community safety and community policing. Now more than ever, community policing efforts that were started by Chief Orzech must continue. We need to build stronger relationships in our neighborhoods, in and outside of the police department, but that also includes ensuring that all neighbors can feel safe from crime, which has increased nationally and in Sandusky since the beginning of the pandemic, and is jeopardizing the quality of life gains that we've made throughout this community. We look forward to supporting our new police chief, Jared Oliver, as he leads that department into 2021 and beyond. We've also made critical investments in supporting business and creating a stronger economy for Sandusky. I mentioned earlier the business relief program that we were able to very nimbly get out the door this spring. We will have another round of that with $150,000 of CARES Act funding in January, because we know our small businesses are hurting now as they approach a winter, even more so than they were last spring. We have been investing in businesses as part of this Bicentennial Vision Plan. In fact, over 200 businesses have received support from the city, leveraging over $40 million in private investment with these grants. We've also, in addition to investing in small businesses, have focused on targeting industry and manufacturing. And we're partnering right now with Perkins Township, Perkins Local Schools, Erie County Economic Development Corporation, and the owner of KBI on a unique tax sharing arrangement that's going to allow that property to be repositioned for new economic activity and bring really important high-wage jobs back into our community. And we're going to continue to partner with our major economic anchors such as Cedar Point, Fire and Regional Medical Center, Civista, and others to advocate for making investments for a stronger regional economy and to make catalytic investments, including in the upcoming recommendations of our downtown master plan. And finally, we're going to make sure that Sandusky's neighborhoods and the residents that live in those neighborhoods continue to be connected to economic opportunity and opportunities for quality of life. One of the ways that we're doing that is through the Sandusky Bay Pathway. When we first started planning for revamping the pathway a few years ago, many residents asked us who was going to use it. Well, now that we've debuted the first mile, we know who's using it. In fact, on one Saturday in September, as measured by the Erie Metropolitan Planning Organization, 800 pedestrians and cyclists used the pathway in just an 8-hour period. There were more pedestrians on Shoreline Drive that day than there were cars on Shoreline Drive that day. And the question that we get more often than any other now is, when are we going to have it finished? And I can tell you that the Venice Road section of the pathway is going to be completed in 2021, and that we're making investments in the pathway on Meg Street in 2022, as well as breaking ground on the section that will go from Cedar Point Drive to Cedar Point Sports Center and the new Landing Park, as well as East Water Street. So we continue to aggressively find ways to bring outside funding to the pathway to grow that recreational trail. But in addition to the pathway, we have to continue to find ways to support the nearly 15% of Sandusky residents that do not have access to an automobile, as well as the nearly 30% of Sandusky residents that are car challenged and only having one automobile for a multi-person household. And the way that we've been doing that over the last several years is by aggressively expanding Sandusky Transit. And we've more than doubled the ridership in Sandusky Transit. One of the ways that we've done that are through unique partnerships with folks like Cedar Point, Bowling Green State University, Kalahari. We're going to keep building on those partnerships, and we're going to keep investing in transit, because COVID had a dramatic impact on transit financing, but we continued to operate this essential service for those who need it in spite of the challenges caused by COVID. In fact, we continue to improve the system, and we did so by launching the Easy Fare this past summer. Easy Fare is a mobile app used by Sandusky Transit and 12 other transit agencies in the region that allows riders to use their phones to buy their bus passes instead of needing exact change. So ridership levels, in spite of the challenges of COVID, are still ahead of where they were in 2018. And when I pause and think about the progress that we've made economically in Sandusky, through collaborations in Sandusky, and our neighborhoods in Sandusky, over the last 5 years, it's really exciting. And I think that there have been things and milestones along the way that have helped generate enthusiasm. And when you think about everything that's happened in the last 5 years, it can be easy to forget just how much has happened. Like when we welcomed the governor of the state of Ohio to deliver his State of the State address in 2017 in Sandusky, to when we celebrated our Bicentennial and welcomed the tall ships and the large duck in 2018, to making national news for adopting Election Day as a municipal holiday and being named America's best coastal small town in 2019 by USA Today. We've made incredible progress in Sandusky over the past 5 years on nearly every front through the hard work in city neighborhoods, our partnerships, and those milestones, and they've placed us near, I believe, what is called an inflection point. The Economic Innovation Group, which is a public policy think tank, defines an inflection point in legacy cities as one where investments begin to take hold over time and a community begins to stabilize. City priorities can begin to shift from just managing decline to planning for a vibrant future. And when a community is able to arrive at an inflection point, it triggers the stabilization of what had been a declining population, increased tax base, reduced vacancy of both residential and commercial structures, new private and mixed use investments returning to parts of the city where they haven't been for decades. And that new investment in turn attracts more investment, more residents, more visitors, creating a virtuous cycle. And then finally, the perception of the community begins to change, and it becomes no longer viewed by its decline, but viewed by its renaissance. I believe that Sandusky is nearing an inflection point because of the hard work and accomplishments over the last several years, all of which were made possible by being aggressive and creative and collaborative. And with the support of our city commission, we will continue to be all of those things as we emerge from this pandemic. We're investing in our future, as evidenced by the construction of 3 new primary schools by Sandusky City Schools and the creation of a Center for Higher Education in downtown Sandusky. In 2021, under the direction and leadership of our City Commission and with the partnership of community stakeholders, we will embark on the creation of a new strategic vision for Sandusky. We will once again engage every neighborhood and resident of this city and determine new and innovative ways to build on the success of the last 5 years as we recover from the impact of this pandemic. And just don't take my word for it. Watch this short video from New Departure Films that includes some of our strongest community partners on how they feel about Sandusky's future. Thank you.
Sandusky, Ohio is perhaps at the most pivotal point in our history. I believe that the work that's occurred over the last 6 to 8 years has really made a shift in not only how we see ourselves, but how others see us as well. I couldn't be prouder of the work that the city leaders are doing and the vision that they have around what kind of city we can be. It's one thing to get a lot of accolades, but it's another thing to feel empowered by your community.
I think we've got, city managers and planners and other officials around here who are, willing to try things that haven't been done before, because that's how you move forward. Look at what has been done in the past 5 years. If that isn't proof that there's definitely a forward momentum, I don't know what is.
It's all about collaboration. It's all about, rolling up your sleeves. That's the main reason why Sandusky is where it's at today, is because of the leadership within the commissioners and Eric and his team. They're making hard decisions, and that's what attracts us to making sure that we can help and do our part as a developer and a partner for the city to move the city of Sandusky forward.
We've had such a great relationship with the city of Sandusky. I think especially during the pandemic, we just saw just this great community support of people coming together and trying to figure this out. The egos were left at the door, and it was, okay, what do we need to do to make this happen? And I think that's what, we think of when we think of working with Sandusky.
We in our district talk a lot about building better dreams. And a lot of people always assume that's around the physical structure of the bricks and the mortar and the buildings themselves. But it's really much bigger than that. It's about building each other, building our neighborhoods, building our communities, being able to engage with our neighbors and friends in ways that make us a better community.
I think it's bringing people together for a common cause. That's a hard task. But I think especially coming out of a pandemic and seeing that so many people are in need, I think it's possible to bring people together, to show that there's a way to join and to be part of the solution. You know, we see that in our volunteers. They want to show their humanity. You know, they want to help their fellow citizen. They want to improve things.
I think it's every leader's responsibility to be open, to be fair, to be equitable in their decision making, to be engaged in inclusion and diversity, to be intentional about it. I think we live in a nation where there's been a stain of historical issues that have impacted racial minorities or gender-related matters. Sandusky is not excluded from those kind of dynamics. I think what today's city leaders bring to the table is an intelligence that understands that history, understands what needs to take place, and a willingness to be a part of those kind of conversations.
The only reason I am here, this building is here, this program is here, is because a whole lot of really smart people decided to come together. And they're all from different walks of society. They're all from different businesses, universities. I mean, look at everything that's part of this partnership. It's the City of Sandusky, it's Maru's Development, it's Bowling Green State University, it's a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company like Cedar Fair. I'm sure not everyone in every single one of these groups, you know, politically align or whatever it is, but they all had an amazing idea to bring this program together and to deliver it in a way that's never been done in higher education before. So this is just that example of what can happen, how much success there can be when people come together and have amazing ideas and discuss it and are willing to look beyond their differences.
It's easy to say that you need to work together, but if you don't make the effort on all sides, then it doesn't work. And you got to roll up your sleeves, you got to make hard decisions, and you got to make it happen. And I think that's the difference in Sandusky, is they make it happen. We've been in a lot of different cities across America. I tell you, I've never seen such a hardworking group. They truly want to see Sandusky be successful and take Sandusky to the next level.
I spent the last 6 years as a commissioner feeling that the wind was at our backs. Almost at the very moment I accepted the office of president of this commission, the wind's changed. That's how life is. It can change in the blink of an eye. People are never measured when times are good. It's in the difficult moments that you find out what you're really made of. My fellow commissioners and all of our dedicated employees and our gifted city manager have all found out what they're made of: grit, determination, and perseverance. The next few months will continue to be challenging. I assure you that despite the calendar, we're not entering the dark days of winter. The vaccine that will end this pandemic is within our grasp. There is a horizon in front of us. We have hope. I urge each of you to stay safe, stay the course, wear a mask, continue to social distance, and believe, like I do, that Sandusky will emerge stronger and more resilient than ever before. My Irish heritage tells me that not only will the wind return to our backs, but the road will rise to meet us. God bless you, and God bless the city of Sandusky.